In 1985, Simon & Schuster published The Serpent and the Rainbow, a Harvard scientist astonishing journey into the secret societies of Haitian voodoo, zombies, and magic. Davis is an anthropologist and researcher. His book focuses specifically on a case of zombification. His discoveries included a practice in which people would be drugged, appear clinically dead, and then be buried alive, only to claw their way out in a zombie-like state. The book was a bestseller, and naturally, Hollywood became interested in adapting it into a feature film. Wes Craven was brought in to direct, even though there was concern after the disappointment of Deadly Friend. The script was written by Richard Maxwell and Adam Rodman. The Serpent and the Rainbow was released on February 5, 1988. Bill Pullman plays Dr. Dennis Allen, an anthropologist who is hired to investigate the zombification process in Haiti so that a pharmaceutical company can study and mass-produce the drugs used in the process. During the investigation, Dr. Allen ends up meeting and falling in love with a local woman named Marielle. However, his investigation puts him at odds with Dargent Bertrand. After successfully getting the drugs to America, Dr. Allen returns to Haiti to save Marielle and defeat Dargent. The film was another chance for Craven to break into the mainstream while still staying in the horror genre. The studio's hope was that they would please both Craven's built-in horror audience and non-horror fans alike, which, like Deadly Friend, led to reshoots to add some more nightmarish imagery. However, the genre blend is more successful in Serpent and the Rainbow than the one in Deadly Friend. The film ends up feeling like a darker, scarier take on Indiana Jones. It's an interesting adventure film with exotic locations combined with dark, surreal imagery. The movie was shot partially in Haiti as well as the Dominican Republic. John Lindley was the cinematographer, and he did an excellent job. The film blends a documentary style with a more surreal aesthetic during the hallucinations and dream sequences. The documentary style really makes you feel like you're there in this unfamiliar territory, as well as adding a subtle sense of chaos. The more surreal stuff, probably added in reshoots, feels more traditional but works well. They let the imagery speak for itself. The film has a wonderful tone and atmosphere. The best thing about the movie is ultimately its premise. Being buried alive is a universal fear. Regardless of the movie's quality, it's guaranteed to have one terrifying scene. And it adds suspense because you know Dr. Allen has to be buried alive at some point. As an audience member, you're kind of just waiting for it to happen. And it's a really effective scene. I also appreciate that Craven and the writers took Haitian culture and voodoo seriously. It doesn't feel exploitive or gimmicky. The movie, at least from the perspective of a white kid from Kansas, is respectful. My big issue with the movie is ultimately character. The movie originally was around 3 hours long and then cut down to about 100 minutes because it was too talky. Obviously, I don't know, but I'm curious if the cut footage featured more character nuance. The characters in the film are all kind of flat and rely too heavily on the actors to carry it. And the performances are great, the characters just aren't interesting. The only arc is Dr. Allen doesn't believe in souls at the beginning of the film and does by the end. There's no crisis of faith, no confrontation with things he originally thought were nonsense. I mean, he does literally have to confront it in that he has to fight Bertrand, but there's not a lot deeper than what's on the screen, even though the film's tone and style suggest deeper themes. Because of that, the movie ends up being a bit of a slog for me. I've tried watching it many times because I love the atmosphere and certain sequences, but I fall asleep nearly every time. It was difficult to stay awake and focus during my viewings of the film for this review. However, I think I'm in the minority. Serpent and the Rainbow became a decent hit, making almost $20 million, nearly tripling its $7 million budget. And it was received positively by critics, many of whom claimed Craven successfully transcended the horror genre. Can I bitch about that for a second? Because I saw the same kind of reviews for Hereditary and Midsommar, and it really gets under my skin. The implication when critics say that is that horror films aren't real movies, and these artsy things are valid. And I love Ari Aster's work. It's not anything against his particular movies, but I have seen more thematically rich films with engrossing characters in the horror genre than 90% of the generic Oscar bait dramas that the studio manufactures these days. horror is a terrific and valid genre. It doesn't need to be transcended. So fuck off with that nonsense. Overall, I neither like nor dislike this movie. I can appreciate all of the technical elements, and there are standout sequences, but there's no real emotional resonance for me. Interestingly, Craven did not use Serpent and the Rainbow's success to break out of horror. Instead, he decided to dive into a new type of slasher with the promise of creative freedom.